I never imagined my life would unravel like this. Just a few years ago, if you'd asked, I would have described it as stable ordinary even. I was married to David for over 12 years. We had the kind of life people envied. A lovely home. In a quiet suburban neighborhood, steady careers, and a routine that offered comfort, if not excitement. But stability can be deceiving. It has a way of hiding the fractures just beneath the surface. Looking back, the distance between David and me didn't arrive all at once. It crept in quietly through late work hours, forgotten conversations, and the constant noise of responsibilities. Over time, we stopped being partners. We became roommates, navigating the same schedule but in separate worlds. I brought it up again and again. "We're just busy," David would say. "Things will get better." But they didn't. Most nights, I sat alone on the porch, sipping tea and watching the streetlights flicker on. That's where I first noticed Ryan. He'd moved in with his parents a few houses down young, fresh out of college, always outside helping with yard work or running errands. There was something about him at ease, a warmth that stood in stark contrast to the emotional cold front in my own home. At first, it was nothing more than polite waves, passing greetings. But over time, our porch chats grew longer. Ryan would stop by after mowing the lawn or walk over just to sit and talk. And talk we did about books, memories, life's little ironies. He listened not out of obligation, not distractedly, but wholly. For the first time in years, I felt seen. I told myself we were just neighbors, just friends. But the truth was harder to ignore. I was starving for connection, and Ryan offered it without conditions. He didn't see me as a housewife or someone's wife. He saw me as a person. We began spending more time together, walking, cooking, watching old films. David didn't notice. Or maybe he did and didn't care enough to ask. He had his job, his phone, his world. The emotional chasm in my marriage grew wider with each passing day. One evening, the sunset painted the sky in soft pinks and oranges. Ryan and I sat quietly on the porch, jasmine in the air. He looked at Manad with lust, not with expectation, but with a tenderness that startled me. I changed the subject quickly, but the moment lingered, humming in the background of my thoughts. I felt guilty. I was married. I'd made vows. But my heart was drifting somewhere new, somewhere I hadn't meant to go. Ryan never made a move, never said anything inappropriate. But the unspoken tension between us crackled like static at home. I tried to salvage things. I suggested date nights, getaways, even counseling. But David brushed it all off. He was always tired, always too busy, always somewhere else, even when he sat beside me. I confided in my friend Sarah one afternoon, hoping for clarity. She listened, then said gently but firmly, "You need to fix your marriage, not escape it." She was right. I knew that. But knowing didn't stop the ache, or the comfort I found in Ryan's presence. Then came the storm. It was one of those heavy, drenching afternoons. I returned from the store soaked, juggling bags and an umbrella when I saw Ryan sitting on my porch, equally drenched but smiling. "I came to check on you," he said. I let him in, handed him a towel. We sat in the living room listening to rain tap against the windows. The silence between us felt heavier than usual, more intimate. I don't know why, but I began to cry. Everything spilled out. The loneliness, the grief for the life I used to have. The fear that I'd never feel truly loved again. Ryan didn't interrupt. He didn't offer quick fixes. He just listened. And when I whispered, "I just want to feel alive again," he gently replied, "You deserve to be happy. You deserve to be loved." Those words echoed in my head long after he left that evening. They were simple, but they cracked something open in me, something I hadn't dared to feel in years. And I knew, without even acting on it, that I was already standing on the edge of something that could never be undone. But I also knew I was. Standing on a dangerous edge, crossing that line would change everything: my marriage, my reputation, my very identity. The days that followed. I tried to distance myself from Ryan, hoping to suppress the growing feelings inside, may avoided our usual chats. Declined his invitations and kept myself busy with errands and community work, but avoiding him only made me more aware of how much had come to mean to me. David remained a distant, absorbed in his work, and indifferent to my absence. The more he withdrew, the more I questioned whether there was anything left to salvage in our marriage. My efforts to reach him felt one-sided, and the rejection weighed heavily on my heart. One evening, I sat alone in the dark living room, staring at family photos on the mantel. A reminder of what once was my phone buzzed. It was a message from Ryan. "I hop hour, okay? I miss our talks." Tears welled up in my eyes. I missed him. Too, his absence had left a void I couldn't fill with anything else. Against my better judgment, I replied, asking if he wanted to meet for coffee. He agreed, and we decided to meet the next day at Asmel Cafe in town. When we met, the conversation flowed effortlessly, as if no time had passed. We laughed, we shared stories, and for a few hours the heaviness in my heart lifted. But his wet-hearted ways, he looked at me with a depth it made my heart ache. "Life doesn't always give us what we deserve," he said softly, "but sometimes we have to fight for our own happiness." His words haunted me that night. I lay awake staring at the ceiling, my mind a storm of emotions. Was I selfish for wanting happiness? Was I betraying Mivos? Or had my husband already broken thumb by abandoning me emotionally? The guilt and longing battled inside me, neither willing to surrender. As the weeks went by, my connection with Ryan quietly resumed. We were careful, always meeting in public, never cross uncanny lines that would betray our friendship. But the emotional bond between us was undeniable, growing stronger with each interaction. On evening, as we walked by the lake, Ryan finally voiced what had been lingering in between us for so long. "I care about you more than I should," he admitted, his voice trembling. "But I didn't want to be the reason you Gathart." I looked into his eyes, feeling the weight of his honesty. "You're not the problem, Ryan. My marriage is." We stood there in silence, the gentle breeze carrying away our unspoken fears. That night, I made a decision, one that would set in motion a chain of events neither of us could have foreseen. The morning after our walk by the lake, my mind was heavy with the weight of my decision. I had reached the point where I could no longer live in the shadows of my marriage, pretending that everything was fine, while my heart silently withered. A connection with Ryan had become my only refuge, the only place where I felt seen, valued, and alive. But I knew that longer I continued living this double life, the more pain it would cause Beth, for myself, and for him. I decided thought I needed to confront David, not about Ryan, but about our marriage, a boat of writhing we had allowed to fall. Aperitif, there was any chance of saving what once had, it had to start with honesty. If not, then it was time to stop living. Elliot, evening after dinner, I asked David if we could talk. He barely looked up from his laptop, distracted as usual. Is that across from him at the kitchen table, me hands trembling slightly. "David," I began softly, "we need to talk, Andy. Need you to really listen to me." Heffinally closed the laptop, his expression known of mild annoyance. "What is it now?" The coldness in his tone made my heart sink, but I pushed forward. "Can't keep living like this. We've grown so far apart, and I feel like I'm invisible in this house. We don't talk, we didn't connect, and I feel completely alone." Sighed and leaned back in his chair, ubbing his forehead. "Look, work has been stressful. You know that things will settle down eventually." Shook my head. "You've been saying that for years, David, but nothing changes. I've tried so hard to reconnect with you, to make things better, but you just push me away every time." His face grew defensive. "Azo, what are you saying? That this is my fault? That the reason you're unhappy? Saying that we've both let the Chopin," I replied, trying to stay calm. "Booty, can't carry the weight of this marriage alone anymore. I need to know if you even want to try to fix it." He sat in silence for a moment before answering, "Honestly, I don't know. Maybe we've just grown apart." His words hit me like a punch to Thetis. After everything we'd built, after all the years together, that was all heckled off me. Indifference, tears flooded my eyes, but I refused to let them leave. That's how you feel, then maybe Westhold consider. Separating. David looked startled, but only briefly. Is that rely? You want, I don't know what I want no more, I whispered, but I can't keep leaving like strangers under the summer roof. The conversation ended there, not shouting. No dramatic scene, just the quiet death of a marriage that had been crumbling for years. Over the next few days, we barely spoke. David moved into the guest room and we began discussing logistics of separating our lives. It was surreal how easily everything gungraveled once the words were finalist. Pondering that time, I avoided Ryan. I needed to clear my head to make sure that my decisions were not clouded by my feelings for him. But he remained patient, respecting my space, never pressuring me, and that only made me care for him more. The days turned into weeks. David Andy continued our quiet separation. We hadn't filed any official papers yet, but emotional detachment was complete. House felt emptier than ever. Thistleance was deafening. Gone. Afternoon. Ryan showed up at my door holding a small potted plant. A Peasley. I thought you could use a little life in here, he said with a warm smile. I couldn't help but laugh softly. You always know exactly what I need. He stepped inside, and for the first time in weeks we sat together like old times. He told him everything about my conversation with David, about the inspiration, about the hollow ache that followed. Weedy never wanted this to happen, I confessed, but staying in that mirage was killing me. Ryan reached for my Honda's touch, gentle and reassuring. You did what you had to do. You deserve Vito. Be happy even if the path is painfulest. We sat there. I felt a strange sense of peace. The guilt that once weighed heavily on me had begun to lift. I was not running from my marriage anymore. I had faced it, confronted it. What remained was a fragile hope for a future where I could finally breathe. Over the following months, David and I finalized our separation. We agreed to sell the house and divide our assets. That process was surprisingly civil, almost business, like there were no screaming matches, no bitter accusations. Just two people acknowledging the end of something that had long since died. Throughout it all, Ryan remained steady. Anchor. Our bond continued to grow. But we were careful, taking things slowly, mindful of the fragile circumstances. The last thing I wanted was to make compulsive choices that would only lead to regret. As I settled into my new apartment, as small but cozy space not far from my old neighborhood, Ryan helped me every step. The way unpacking boxes, assembling furniture, even hanging curtains. His presence brought warmth and comfort. Tough, unfamiliar surroundings. In evening, as we sat on the balcony overlooking the city lights, I finally allowed myself to speak the words I had kept hidden for so long. I don't know where this path will lead us, Ryan, I said quietly, but I want to find out with you. Looked at me, his eyes filled with a mix of relief and happiness. Have been waiting to hear you say that. From that night on, we allowed ourselves to fully embrace the connection that had grown between us. There was no longer any secrecy, no more guilt. We were simply two people who had found each other in the most unexpected way. But life has a way of testing your happiness, and our story was far from over. One afternoon, as I was browsing through the local market, I ran into Sarah, my close friend, who had once warned me about this very path. She noticed the glow on my face, the ease in my demeanor. You seem different, she remarked. Harry hesitated, unsure how much to reveal. I own things have changed. She looked at me with a knowing expression. Is it, Ryan? I felt my stomach tighten. How did we've seen you together? She said gently, I'm not judging you, but you need to be careful. People talk. Her words sent a chill through me. I had been so caught up in my own world that I hadn't considered how others might perceive my relationship with Ryan, especially given his age and our history as neighbors. Do you think I've made a mistake? I asked. Sarah paused before answering. You think you followed your heart, but hearts can be reckless. Just be sure this is what you truly want, not just a way to escape the pain. That conversation stayed with me 4 days. I knew she meant well, and deep down I shared some of her concerns. Was blinded by my emotions. Was I risking my reputation, my future, for a relationship that might not withstand the pressure? Soft realitarian. Sensed my unease one evening as Wes sat quietly together, he spoke up. "I know people will judge us," he said softly, "but I don't care what they think. I care about you, and I'm willing to face whatever comes as long as we're honest with each other." His words reassured, maybe the anxiety lingered, the whispers in the neighborhood grew louder, and it became clear that not everyone was as accepting as Sarah. Some neighbors avoided me altogether, while others exchanged knowing glances when I walked by. The judgment was subtle but suffocating. David too eventually caught wind of my relationship with Ryan one day. He called unexpectedly, his voice cold and sharp. "He heard about you and Ryan," he said without preamble. I braced myself. "What about it? He's half your age," David sneered. "Do you have any idea how ridiculous you look?" His words stung. Booty refused to let him shame me. "You stopped caring long before Ryan came into my life. I'm finally happy. And that's not enough you're concerned." David laughed bitterly. I laughed bitterly. "Leal. Regret this, people won't forget." Call ended, leaving me shaken but resolute. I knew there would be consequences, but I also knew that I could no longer live my life based on other people's expectations. The next few months were a test of strength, of my own resilience, of my relationship with Rhiannon, of my ability to withstand through it, of public scrutiny, but through it all, Ryan remained my constant, my partner, my friend. And then, just when I thought had weathered the worst of the storm, something happened that would change everything once again. Unexpected turn came on a quiet Sunday morning. Ryan received a job offer from a company in another city. A remarkable opportunity that he couldn't ignore. When he told me, my heart sank. Booty knew I couldn't stand in the way of his future. "I want to stay here with you," he said, "but this is a chance I've worked hard for." I smiled through the heaviness in my chest. "You deserve this, Ryan. You have a whole life ahead of you. We can figure things out." We both knew the distance would test us, the judgment from others, the age gap, and now the physical separation. It all piled up like a mountain we weren't sure we could climb. Bet we promised to try to give our love a real chance in the weeks before his move. We spent every moment together, savoring the simple things: walks, conversations, quiet dinners. The fear of losing him lingered, but I refused to let it overshadow our remaining time. The day left, I stood at the station watching his train pull away. Tears blurred my vision, but I stayed strong. This wasn't an ending, it was another test. We stayed connected, calls, video chats, weekend visits, but the distance slowly changed yet things. Ryan's career flourished, and I found new strength in my independence. Our love remained, but we both knew life was pulling us in different directions. So, year later, we met again, sitting across from each other at that Samsonal cafe. We shared a bittersweet smile. "We'll always have our story," he said softly. I nodded. "And I'll always be grateful you reminded me I deserve happiness." Our paths eventually diverged. Ryan had given me something priceless, a chance to rediscover myself, to breathe free from a life of silent suffering, and to choose my own happiness. And in dying, that was the greatest gift of all. Asterisk. Thanks for listening. Bye.